Today, we have here a giant, a legend, a pioneer of the ball python world. He's created countless iconic morphs, been in the ball python industry for 21 years. Welcome, Justin Kobylka.
Thank you very much.
Hell yeah. I'm so excited for this. And I have to say, you have a very cool name. Of course, I know nothing about Western names, but you do have a very cool name.
Really?
Yeah, I think it might be cooler than the DG Pompeii you made.
No, I don't think so.
So can I know the origin of that name?
So the name originates, we believe it's Ukrainian.
Yeah.
Kobylka. But it's also a Polish name. It's also a Russian name. But we know it's Eastern European.
Cool.
Yes.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
You started breeding king snakes in college dorm, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is amazing because I started breeding in college dorm. But why did you switch to ball python?
Well, mostly because initially I just wanted to breed a snake. I loved snakes. It didn't really matter what. And as a kid, I always wanted to find like scarlet king snakes, which is of course an American species, but they're red and white, right? Red, black, and white, and they're so bright. As a kid, it was so hard to find those. They're very rare. And so when I started breeding snakes, when I started thinking about breeding snakes, I found a pair of Sinaloan milk snakes, which of course are very beautiful, but they're also bright red and everything. So to me, it was like I'm get to breed the snake of my dreams. But after I did that for a couple of years with success, I started to discover ball pythons, and there's so many colors. Well, back then there's only like 3 colors, but it was a lot. It felt like a lot. That I got just really captured by the idea of ball pythons. Plus, ball pythons were expensive enough that I thought, well, maybe I can make some money, actually make it my career. With king snakes back then, they're way too cheap. There's just no way we could ever make it a career.
When you started breeding ball pythons, how expensive are pastels?
I bought my first pastel. It was about between $5,000 and $6,000.
What? And the year?
Yeah.
Like 2000.
That would have been 2005. That's exactly right.
Wow.
Good
Amazing.
Yes.
My guessing is also amazing.
Yes.
Okay. So there were 3 morphs, you said?
There was a handful of morphs. Initially, when I started really getting ball pythons on my radar, it was albino, piebald, clown, pastel spider. Maybe that's all the ones I can think of. Hypo was also out there a little bit. So that's 6. But it was pretty narrow, and most people were not thinking about combining them much. Aside from the bumblebee, that was the first kind of combination that I saw. People were not thinking about combining them. They were thinking about just how do we make more of them.
Right. And so with not many morphs on our hands at the time, IDing a snake is not really a big topic, right?
Super easy.
Super easy.
No one argued about it back then.
But you made this super old video, maybe not super old, but more than 10 years, about how to identify a yellow belly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yellow belly was hard.
Yellow belly was hard at the time, I suppose. Why did you start making content about identification of snakes?
Mostly because it was a journey that I was on, I had been excited about ball pythons for a long time, and I was very enthusiastic about them. So when I bought my first yellow belly, I wanted to show the world what made it a yellow belly, why it was different. And it was, back then, my content was just based on showing people what I learned, and it was really easy.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And as we know now, yellow bellies don't really have yellow bellies.
Right.
But at the time, do they actually really have yellow bellies?
Some of them do. There was a line of yellow belly called the orange belly.
Yes.
And I don't know if they actually had different bellies than anything else, but everybody was trying to say that theirs was better back then. There was Ralph Davis had a line of yellow belly called the Goblin. I don't know if you've ever heard that.
Goblin?
Yeah.
Not really.
Ralph Davis bred a morph he called the Goblin for a long time, and it had those belly markers. And it wasn't until later that we found out they were yellow bellies.
Really?
But then there's also the orange belly, and there was a few other people always trying to say their yellow belly was special. It was better than everyone else's yellow belly because there's so few genes. Everybody wanted to say theirs is better. But it was kind of a controversial thing right at the time, trying to track down, what was the yellow belly, what wasn't. There was a lot of people going through shipments from Africa trying to find them because, yellow bellies it started at $10,000 each when I remember.
$10,000 each?
Yes, $10,000 each, and then they came down pretty quick, but people were buying stuff from Africa and going through the babies. Oh, this is a yellow belly, $5,000. You know what I'm saying? They're trying to buy a $5 baby and make it into a $5,000 baby.
Wow.
And so it was a lot of excitement about it. But yeah, most of them didn't have yellow bellies. They have a little bit of orange in the flecking on the sides.
The flames?
Yeah. Well, no, orange in the flames, yes, but the bellies part had a little bit of off color compared to a pure white belly.
Yeah, of course.
But not very yellow.
True. Did any of those lines of yellow bellies turn out to be the second type of yellow belly we know now?
I don't know what the direct connection is. Maybe it was one of those lines, but what happened is all those lines, people found out that they made ivories and they didn't look any different. The ivories didn't look any different. And once people they found out that it didn't make, different ivories, they just dropped those names.
Oh, okay.
And started calling them yellow belly because yellow belly was the name that everybody was trying to buy.
Yeah, there were orange bellies, like you said. There were bling yellow bellies.
Bling, yes, I forgot about that one.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. And I remember that they proved out yellow belly by making ivories first.
Correct.
So you said a yellow belly cost $5,000. What about an ivory?
I don't remember any ivories being available back then. People who made ivories were like, "Oh, great! I can use this to make lots of yellow bellies." And I don't think they were for sale.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a big deal to get a yellow belly. I mean, get an ivory, a big deal, because there was no blue-eyed Lucy's back then yet, right? There's no super fires yet. So there's the only way to make a white snake.
When was a BL complex discovered?
It was probably in 2 to 3 years after that. Yeah, it was Ralph Davis, I think, again, that made it first. And he didn't know they were allylic. He had his phantoms, and he had made super phantoms, which are kind of purple-gray, right?
Right.
But then when he bred it into his, what he called lesser platinums back then they made a white snake, and that's how we found out they were allylic.
Phantom lessers, they have this yellow stripe, a light yellow stripe down the back. Which is not really like an all white snake.
Yeah,
but
mostly white.
But then they found out you can make pure white snake with Mojave lessers or super lessers, right?
Exactly.
Amazing. Speaking of ivories, you have made a mark in the ball python world a few years ago, which that project is my favorite, and that's the Silky Way project. And you've been making crazy combos, not like just stacking genes, but you have found some unexpected effect with certain combos. And that's with, of course, Silky Ways, Pompeii. And I remember that red striped leopard champagne you made.
Yes.
It was crazy. What's your magic?
I think my magic is I think about it a lot. And I'm a mix of artistic and very practical. So I have an artistic sense of I know what I would like to see, but I tend to always focus on the most likely outcome. Like which combo is most likely to surprise me. So I always kind of narrow in. I usually use some interesting interaction. Like I would say so far in my career, I've kind of leveraged unique interactions. The first one I can think of was leopard spot nose.
Right.
Very unique interaction. And I thought that's very interesting. It's interesting how patterned it is, Yeah. And then I took that into the clown and it became great. But when you find something interesting, even in the base form, you can usually go a lot of different directions with it from that angle, right? So that was the first one. The Silky Way was pretty early on. That was probably more luck than anything. But back then, I mean, practically thinking, if you have a white snake, you need dark pattern to make it less white.
Yeah.
And so, leopard was the obvious choice, right, back then. Spot nose was another one, but spot nose didn't work, right? Spot nose ivory is not very. Spot nose ivory is only slightly different.
Yeah.
But leopard ivory is very different, right? Yeah. So not everything works.
Right?
I'd
say actually nothing works besides leopard, as far as I know.
In ivory?
Yeah, like if you're talking about black, dark jeans, black pastel definitely not work.
Black
it's whiter.
Yeah.
If you just use black hat, there's no difference. You have to use it with something else. And even chocolate doesn't work.
Yeah.
Wookie doesn't work.
Yeah.
How did you hit on leopard? That's just
it's a little bit of a coincidence too, because the leopard was something I had, and it was before chocolate and Wookie were a very big deal, and so I just it's a little bit of luck too.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing, truly. And when you work towards Pompeii, now that's another thing. You are not chasing multiple recessive. You use one recessive, and then 4 more incomplete dominants. How? How do you know you should use those?
It's to me, it's just trying things, and I was in the right place at the right time. Because historically, I was after people made. If you think about clowns have not always been popular.
Yeah.
Initially, they were kind of exciting. When people made pastel and killer clowns, people were very excited about those. But then it stopped. And then clowns were not that interesting anymore after the pastel and killer clowns. People moved on to, whatever was exciting back then. It was probably like fires and cinnamons. And, people loved Kodoms back then because you could pump out value, a lot of money out of them, right? So I started making like the fire and the firefly. I made some of those first, but people were not that excited about them, even when I made them. They made the black pastel clown, not that interesting.
Really?
I mean, I think it's interesting, but the market did not think it was interesting because the market was thinking that if you make something that's recessive plus some codoms, that's really hard to make for your money. It'd be much easier to buy a desert and make 100 babies and sell them for $5,000 each. Much easier and less risky.
But you can't breed deserts.
Well,
the female.
You can the males though.
Yeah.
And people didn't know about the girls yet.
Okay.
So back then the deserts were a huge deal, And so the idea though is that there's lots of new codoms finding all the time, and it just made more financial sense to buy a new codom and pump them out instead of trying to work to build and stack something on something else, right?
Right.
So I made the black pastel clown not that interesting, but it was the original black pastel clown female that produced the Pompeii, years later, right? So it all kind of comes together, right? It comes together. It's the very first black pastel clown in the world. But the leopard kind of turned on the world back onto clowns again, because everybody loved reduced pattern clowns, right? And back then, reduced pattern was everything. But then the Batman really lit clowns on fire again, right? And we can do crazy clowns, all these different patterns. And back then, it was right after we made the Pompeii, I was thinking, what's the next thing for clowns? Like what, And Red Stripe, we knew Spot Nose had basically come back from the dead, right?
Yeah.
No one cared about Spot Nose, and then the Batman was made.
Yes.
And they had to have it. I thought, what's the next one that's going to really change things? And I got excited by the idea that maybe it might be Red Stripe.
Like how? You had a dream?
Yeah, a little bit, but mostly, honestly, it's a little bit about just betting against the market.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you go with the obvious choice, everyone else sees it too.
Yeah.
And when you get there, you'll just be sharing the pie with everybody, right? If you can find something that's, again, a little counterintuitive, then you get to eat the whole pie when you get there because no one else tried it before you, or along with you. So that was my thought. I thought, Spot Nose worked because Spot Nose was cool, off the beaten path. So I thought maybe Red Stripe. I had quite a few Red Stripes, but nobody wanted them. Nobody cared about them. I couldn't sell them, and nobody else was selling them. People were just getting rid of them out of their collection.
At that time, is the Cypress Red Stripe out yet?
No,
Oh,
never found yet. No. So I thought, I'll put that into the clown, right? And so I made a red stripe. I bred one of my spot nose clowns. I made a red stripe, spot nose, yellow belly, het clown,
Yeah.
male, and I bred it to that black pastel clown female. And I hit the Pompeii on the first try, 5 eggs, got a male, and then I couldn't make another one for like 10 clutches after that, right? It was really hard.
But now you have the DG Pompeii.
Right, it's beginner's luck though. But you see how it all comes together. To me, that's just the beauty of it is you're searching, but you're searching with creativity and passion, not just practicality, and it's not just money, right? Because if you're looking for money, you're going to go and you're going to produce areas that make money.
Yeah.
But everyone else is doing exactly the same combos. They're all thinking exactly the same thing. You have to kind of go off and use your imagination, build it, and then that plus 20 years, you'll have some real big hits on your hands over that long a time,
And now that is something I find very interesting of you. And that's two things. I'll say the first thing. It is that you talked about betting against the market, and that's by taking some risk and getting a chance of some more gains, I'd say. And how do you leverage it? Like how much of your, let's say, focus is on making something that the market already like? And how much do you do that's just experiments?
Yeah, that's a good question. So to me, you have to do both.
Yeah.
You can't just do one because it's not always going to work. The where you're going weird might not always work. So I would say maybe half and half.
Half and half.
Yeah. I like to always make enough that I know is going to be good to know that my business is going to survive another year. But then all the extra, I want to do interesting things
Does
that I
that
care
still
about.
bothers you now? Like having your business survive?
Yes and no. I mean, I could survive 5-10 years without selling any more snakes if I wanted to.
What?
But it'd be hard. It wouldn't be as fun.
Right, of
It'd be
course.
stressful, and now more than ever I have really good employees that are not cheap. That I want to take care of them and their family. So it's not just me anymore.
Gotta say, you have great camera people, the editing people. You have Summer, who is really good at identifying ball pythons and even
pretty
like
good.
seeing the intricate beauties, I'd say. And so that brings us to our next question, which is, can I say something about your JKR University stuff?
Sure.
Okay. So one thing you mentioned in the university is consistency is the most important to success.
Yes.
And what can we do to improve our consistency, as in what financial decisions and what type of, let's say, combo or business practice should we do to make that consistency easily attainable?
I like this topic a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's just about you find out what your business needs, and then you systematize it, right? Whatever it is, you have to find a way to make it your normal operating procedure. So even if it's something hard, right? We're going to do something hard. We're going to introduce something that's time intensive or whatever. You have to make it normal so that you can do the next hard thing, right? It can't continue to be hard forever, or you'll never get past it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not specific. It's whatever your business needs. For me, it started out being, I know my snakes need to eat every week, and I know that my holdbacks, if I want to be successful, probably you need to eat a second meal, just to grow faster.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's 2 blocks of time that have to be feeding. Like the first thing you can do is make sure that is massively consistent.
Yeah.
Right. Which means you're going to probably, because I don't have employees for many years. I didn't have any employees. Right. So I'm going to need to give up a lot of fun things for a lot of years because they fall on the night that I'm supposed to be
like
doing
the
this
Ferrari
thing. Right.
Okay.
Right. I mean, I didn't have fun for a long time, but I love ball pythons were fun for me. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I just didn't do anything outside of that. And, I'd missed holidays and I missed vacations because I didn't have anyone else who was going to take care of the snakes. And animals are very dependent, right? And if you don't take care of them, they're just automatically going down, right? So you have to be so consistent. So it just in a way, it's about being kind of unreasonable about your life and saying, listen, this is what I'm dedicated to and I love it. And so I'm going to have to say no to a lot of things that are also fun, But then as you get employees, right, then you can start to say, okay, that thing that was really hard for me, now that's easy because now I have people to do it, right? But then you have to manage them very carefully, right?
Yeah.
But as soon as you manage them very carefully, you think, oh, well, now I have time. So now I'm going to do the next hard thing, which is maybe producing content for YouTube.
Yeah.
Right. So content is hard. I didn't know how to do it. So, and I wasn't, I was pretty awkward on camera. I think,
You were?
I feel like I was, I know inside it was hard for me. Maybe it doesn't show on the camera.
I think you are very technical on camera, and I really like that about your videos.
Okay.
There is no clickbaiting. No, a little bit like with the thumbnail, but the content is just pure
straightforward
knowledge.
Yeah.
I really
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
my personality. Is I have a hard time being very flowery about things. And we tried it for a while, but it wasn't natural. But that was the hard thing to do is find out how to get comfortable on camera, find out how to do it pretty well, and then for years I was editing it myself. Right?
What?
Yes, I would do it myself, and I enjoyed it, but it was a big time sink. It was really hard for me. I was very, very particular, and my skill level does not meet my expectation level because I have high expectations and low skills, so very difficult. But I did it for many years, and eventually I was like, "This is the hard thing. I've got to find a way to make it easy, so I can do another hard thing." So eventually I hired Summer. Summer was the first person to come in and actually edit my videos for me. And suddenly I had all this time on my hands. Okay, what's the next hard thing? International shipping. And then I get into that. I hated international shipping. I mean, I liked selling snakes, but I did not like paperwork and logistics and flights. And, so then I brought someone in to do that, and the next hard thing. That's what systematizing is. You just you find ways to get things done consistently every time. And maybe it's you, maybe it's someone else. But if you don't move past these stages, you can't continue to grow. And to me, that's been a really fun part of the business.
So what I get from that is you have to standardize your stuff. You have to systematically make a system, and then you have to delegate.
Yes,
Right.
and find good people to delegate to. Yes.
Awesome. And I suppose back in the days when we're doing international shipping, we need someone to collect all the animals from different people and then ship it, and that would take sometimes half a year, maybe 8 months.
You collect the animals? What do you mean?
I mean, there are large collectors who collect animals from different breeders and then ship it to overseas.
That's not us, though.
Yeah.
We only do it for ourselves, so
Yeah,
that makes it
and
easier.
that makes you really efficient, I think. And you have so many countries that you ship to.
Yes.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
Truly.
It's really awesome.
So I've noticed that Kinova is a little bit more than just a reptile breeding facility. It has technology infused with it. You have clutch. You do a lot of cool tech-savvy stuff. And what's with that?
I just like it. To me, I think why I've started this business was interest in the ball pythons and interest in combos and interest in doing that. And the same interest also applies to building the business and then solving problems in general. It's and that's what technology is. It's about solving business problems, industry problems, and I love it.
So what is the problem you're trying to solve right now?
Right now, I think I'm trying to solve things for me, but I'm trying to solve them at scale, right?
Yeah.
So I think of what problems my business needs, and then I think probably most other people would also benefit from that, right? So there's a few problems I see right now. One is complication. As we get further and further into this, the number of combos is exponentially growing, right?
Yeah.
I don't know where it's at. which is a problem. I should know where it's at. I think it's probably 30,000, 40,000 combos
Yeah.
at this point, which is crazy, right?
Yeah.
Of which most people probably only have seen a few thousand of them, which means most people are missing most of the information, right? And that hurts us on several levels. For one thing, people are losing the ability to identify their animals well,
Yeah.
right? Which hurts sellers, right? And it hurts buyers,
Yeah.
and it helps scammers,
Yeah.
right? And so we have like a growing trust issue in our industry. Now, shed testing has helped with that a lot,
Yeah.
right? It has helped, but that's just to me one piece of the equation. I think it's really important that we build first of all, verification factors,
Yeah.
into our industry. So when you could verify through shed testing. We built this into Clutch. We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
And the other
By
thing
the way,
is,
I really like that feature they got
Yes.
there. And the process is seamless. You send the shed, and it automatically turns into a verified gene.
yes,
That's awesome. But please.
it's really amazing. Yeah, and it's just, again, it doesn't require you to do anything, and it also makes it so that you can't misrepresent your animal.
Yeah.
So you can delete a gene after it's been verified, but you cannot. For example, if you test a snake in Clutch and it comes back as het clown, okay, and it was pos het, say, and now we know it's het.
Yeah.
It changes automatically, gets the verified check mark, right?
Yeah.
You can delete het clown off there if you want,
Yeah.
okay, but you can never say. But if it came back as negative for clown, you can never add clown back on there. You can never make it a het ever again without sending in another shed.
That's
prove it.
awesome.
Yeah.
Like-
So again, it makes it so that people can't, once they verify, they can't be like, oh, I didn't test it yet.
Yeah.
Right? Pretend like they didn't test it and it's still a pos het, right? Or whatever.
Once RGI was out like 2 years ago, that's the first thing that came to me. That sellers can test for something, and if it's negative, they can still put the pause on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And that was, it's a big problem, right? And it's again, customers will get scammed.
Yeah.
The other thing that people can do is they can send in a shed from a different animal,
Yeah.
right? And we haven't corrected for that yet, all right? They can send in a shed from a true het and associate it with that animal in the system, and then it comes back as a het, right? So to fix that, we're working on a software that allows you to verify the animal you got from a scale print on the head.
Wow.
So so basically it's using AI or machine learning more accurately
Yeah.
to, when you snap a photo of the head, or actually you don't even have to take a photo of the head, take a picture of the snake. If the head's in focus, the software will automatically detect if it's a ball python,
Yeah.
automatically crop the photo down to the head,
Yeah.
and automatically create data points on every scale to see their relationship to each other, and then create a digital fingerprint, so to speak, right, head print of that animal that can be associated with its record. And so what that does, first of all, is if you ever scan that animal again, it'll automatically know which animal it is, which is great if you have a bunch of normal looking hets.
Yeah.
And I used to have nightmares when I go to, I'd sleep. I have a nightmare of like somehow all my snakes got loose and they're all on the floor, and I don't know which ones are triple het monsoon clown and which ones are normals, and right, you know what I'm saying?
I have 3 of those dreams every few years.
Yes, well, that means you're very conscientious and very particular, like me, because you get nervous about things getting messed up, right? But this would fix that. All you have to do is scan the head of any snake, and it would associate with the correct record and say, oh, that's this snake, obviously. It's very it's very clear. But the other interesting thing is that even on a blue-eyed Lucy, our pure white snake, it would know the difference between different snakes, right?
By scalations?
Scalation patterns, right?
Wow.
Not even by any pattern whatsoever on the color of the snake whatsoever. So it's really powerful. But our thought process is that long term, you could create, when you create a record, you automatically, as you're putting your babies into Clutch and hatching them in the Clutch, you're automatically associating when you add the photo.
Yeah.
You don't even have to do anything. When you add the photo to the record, the system automatically registers the head print. Okay, And then if you ever sell the snake,
Yeah.
right, the customer can scan the head print and know they got the exact snake,
Yeah.
right, that they bought. The exact snake that is associated with these shed tests and this lineage, even if it's an all-white snake. So it protects the customer on the other end. They're actually getting the snake that you sent them the record for, not a different snake.
Yeah.
Right? And then any shed tests they get, it's the same snake, so it would create a mismatch if there's if there's any inaccuracies there. Again, it's in a way solving a problem that people aren't aware of yet. But I think overall, if you look at how other industries have gone,
Yeah.
that's what I use as a guide. I've looked at the horse industry and the high-end dog and cat industry.
Yeah.
Because that's I am kind of at the top of this industry, but I'm always thinking, where's it going? What's it likely to become? And these animals that people have been breeding for thousands of years,
Yeah.
what they've all done is they've all gone to high lineage and verification creates the value, right?
Yeah.
A breeder, a racehorse, right, from impeccable stock is $1 million.
Yeah.
Right. And its sibling that has no records is 300. You know what I'm
Really?
saying? Not really, but there's a big disparity between what's verified as premium lineage versus what has no verification at all. It's just whatever the horse is worth, right? For meat or whatever, right?
Yeah. Especially now we're here in Japan, they might be meat.
Yeah. See, there you go.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're there with snakes, but if we don't do some things that will allow for the verification of that, then I think long term the industry falls into we can't really know anything about anything. And so therefore nothing can be very valuable, which means there's no industry. It's all pets at that point.
Because right now, reputation is all you have. You can only believe someone that has reputation. But what you're doing is going to give new guys the instant reputation.
Yeah, as long as they have verifiable stock from anybody, then the animals they produce are just as good as the person they bought them from.
Amazing.
Yeah, which is amazing.
So exciting.
Yeah.
But I do have one question. What if we have a Blue-Eye Lucy scaleless?
I think that would break the system. Thankfully, scaleless have never taken off, I guess.
Yeah. But have you seen any scaleless females producing?
Never.
Never. So you think it's not gonna?
I don't know. I've never tried myself. I never have owned a scaleless.
Really?
Visual. No. I have one scaleless head in the collection, and I think they're interesting because they have interesting patterns. The scaleless heads do. It seems like the problem with the females, I'm not sure it's that they can't produce. I think the problem with scaleless is just they don't thrive that well. Males and females, they don't thrive that well.
Yeah.
They struggle from shedding, right? It's like somehow their system thinks
so
that
fast.
Yeah, their system it feels like it's under attack or something. All the little micro abrasions. You have to keep them on paper, which means they get too wet, and they kind of go through this weird cycle of constant shedding and constant care. Unfortunately, the scaleless corns didn't have that problem.
Yeah, because they still have their ventral scales.
You think that's the reason? I mean, it makes sense. It could be. I just don't know if that is really the reason.
I think that might be part of the reason. And
it allows them to shed more properly.
Yeah, and because they are from a more dry
climate.
Yeah.
I could see that also being the case.
Yeah.
To me, though, even with corns, it's a little bit of a novelty. I think most people who like snakes think that snakes should have scales.
Yeah.
And that's why I didn't buy into scaleless, even when people didn't know there was anything wrong with them. I didn't know there was anything wrong with them.
Right.
I still didn't do it because I thought, for a gene to really do well, you need everyone to want one.
Yeah.
Actually, you need more than that. You need everyone to want all their snakes to have it. Right? Imagine
Desert Ghost.
Desert Ghost, exactly. You're thinking the same thing I am. Yeah. Desert Ghost fits that criteria.
Yeah.
Scaleless, I think everybody would like to have one, but people, even if they were perfect and had no problems, I don't think people would want a collection of them.
And that's why I only had one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's in the end that just limits the market so much.
Yeah.
Even in corn snakes, people don't want them all scaleless.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. A little aside there.
Yeah. I guess that you have to put that warning on the system then. If you have blue eyed leucistic scale is, then don't put it in the system.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't. We're not going to help you on the
Wow.
head print. Yeah.
Now we have our last question, and that is considering the Asian market and the Taiwanese market in particular, because I'm familiar with that. And I think I feel like our market is like maybe America like 10 years ago or maybe 5 years ago. We have morphs coming in and we have new expos coming up. And yeah, I want some of your insight in our market.
I don't have much insight in your market because I've not been there and seen it. Right.
Yeah.
Even then, it takes a long time to learn the the dynamics of the market. I've been to South Korea and now, Japan the second time, and I'm still learning a lot about like who are the players and like what are the dynamics of it.
Right.
In the end, I think the results are predetermined.
Yeah. And determined by
Market by forces that we can't control.
regulations.
Regulations is one. Obviously, hopefully, it can influence them.
Yeah.
But mostly supply and demand is, in a way, predetermined.
Okay.
Okay, like we're all going to produce like the Taiwanese market is going to produce as much as it can according to what it sees the supply, and if the supply, according to the demand, if the supply goes too much, prices will fall, but then people will get out, because they're not happy, and then suddenly the supply will fall and the demand will, it's the same way in America. It's just on a different scale, right?
What's the speed of that circulation, or like?
So the interesting thing about that is there's a delay factor. So snakes are kind of like farming.
Yeah.
It is agriculture, right? In a way, right? Animal agriculture. You can't. It's not like a factory where you can just turn on production and be like, oh, we're not getting sales. Turn off production. Because it takes them 10 months, right, to grow follicles and lay eggs, and 12 months to complete the whole cycle, right? And so that's what is interesting about our market is, in a way, you always overshoot your target. Okay, so after COVID in America, people's budgets tightened a lot because we were getting some money from the government during COVID, and people were stuck at home and they were very excited. So demand was high. Supply was pretty low, but during COVID, everybody's like, "Oh, there's all this demand," and everybody started raising their production like crazy. Yeah. And when their production went really high, then the demand fell. But everybody still had eggs in the incubator. Everybody still had gravid females. They couldn't be like, turn it off, And so now the last 2 years in America, we've been kind of working through that extra supply, right? And now people who, in response have cut their supply, right? So now what's happening is they're producing less. A lot of people have left the market, right? And so now the supply has gone way down, but demand is starting to come back up. Yeah. But these people can't quickly turn it on again, right? Yeah. They've got to next year decide to produce more. And so it's a weird thing. But for us, it's like a 4 to 5 year
4 to 5 years
cycle, between boom and then I wouldn't call it bust, but boom and then slow down and then boom and slow down, and all different people, and it's just a weird kind of dynamic.
Yeah. In Taiwan, I think because of the market size, we have a much faster seasons. Like we have 1 year on and 1 year off.
Really?
Stuff like that. And with now we have more expos, more breeders are coming out. I think that will, of course, lead to some kind of slow market. Mm-hmm. But I'm still very excited. Yeah. And like I said, it's a lot like the States 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. What will you do if you were in the time and space 10 years ago?
I would recommend that people take it as seriously as they can and do not produce. Well, I know for me, I don't produce for the pet market. right? I produce the high end.
Yeah.
That the best value is there, the best margins are there.
Yeah.
It does require maybe more work because you can't just wholesale haul to a pet store, right?
Yeah.
So I would say for people in my position who like that, really focus hard on producing small numbers but high quality, because you can't produce your way to success in this industry.
Yep.
The more you produce, the more you eat into your own market, right?
Yeah.
It's a weird thing, like, you know, how the diamond suppliers, they always regulate the number of diamonds going on the market.
That's what Dave Green was doing, right?
Yes,
With Monsoon.
With Monsoon, right? Which is really smart. But you can do that with your own projects just by saying, you know, if I make one, you know, if I make one Xanthic DG Monsoon this year, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously be a very expensive snake. I won't sell it, obviously. But if I, you know, it'd be very expensive. But if I made 20 of them, I have to sell.
Yeah.
Like at least 15, probably, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, they're not an expensive snake anymore, right? You got to find 15 people. They're not going to be 15 people who want to pay $50,000.
Right, because one particular combo is its own market. And
Yes.
You're eating away your own market.
Right.
Yeah.
So for me, what I do is, as we're breeding through the year, we say, okay, this girl ovulated, this girl ovulated, this girl ovulated. That's enough. And then I'll go and I'll switch some of these other pairs that I'll try to do it with 6 girls, but once 3 of them ovulate, I switch the other 3 to something else,
Okay.
to a different direction, because
Yeah.
that's going to have its own market, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I try to say, just raise the level of different projects in a way where I have 2 or 3 to sell and not a lot more, you know, and that just keeps things in a reasonable level.
But what about the extra 3,000 female snakes in your secret vault?
Yeah. Well, you know, I can't tell you what I do with those. That's a secret.
All right.
No, there's no incentive to do it on large production levels.
Yeah.
Not at that level. Now, if you're making for the pet market, then yeah, large production, I mean,
Right.
that's fine.
Yeah.
But you can't do large production and high quality because of the odds, the way the odds work. And so you kind of have to choose your game and just be really aware of where you're, you know, meeting the market and whether or not you're stealing from yourself or
Yeah.
someone else, or, you know, where it's going.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
All right. I guess that's all the question I have here.
Okay.
Thank you for your time, Justin.
No problem. No problem. Great talking
And
to you.
great
Enjoyed it very
talk.
much.
And this has been my dream. And
Good.
I hope we can do this more often.
Well, maybe next time.
Yeah, maybe next time.
Taiwan sometime.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Is it a pretty awesome country?
It's a pretty awesome country.
Is there a lot of cool things to see and do?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I can take you to all kinds of crazy places.
Really?
Yeah.
That sounds really great.